Hi, thanks for having me. When I was 11 years old, 6 years after starting my swim career, the members of the US national team became my heroes. I don't know if you guys remember, but I watched in awe as Matt Biondi, Janet Evans, Pablo Morales, and Betsy Mitchell dominated the 1984 Los Angeles Games. I can clearly recall my 11-year-old self sitting crisscross applesauce on the living room floor, watching the games unfold. I turned and looked over at my shoulder at my mom, and I said, "Mom, someday that's going to be me." My mother's reaction wasn't to laugh or anything like that. She just looked at me, kind of cocked her head sideways, and nodded. And I knew at that moment that she would do anything it took to get me there. So my dream was born. I spent the next 16 years working toward that dream. And if you told me when I was 11 that it would take a decade and a half of hard work and training to get there, I'm pretty sure I would have said no thank you. But there I was in the fall, Sydney, Australia, 2000. I led off the women's 4x100 medley relay, doing the backstroke leg. I got us a lead that we would never relinquish. I was followed by Megan Kwan, Jenny Thompson, and the ageless Dara Torres. We won, breaking the former world record by 2.5 seconds. Thank you. So when Dara touched the wall and we yanked her out of the pool, the folks in Sydney, being silly, played American Woman by Lenny Kravitz as loudly as they could across the stadium. It was packed, 38,000 people, and the only one who ever watched me swim in the United States was my mother. The roar that came from the crowd as we stepped onto the podium as a team, I could feel the pressure through my sweats, like standing too close to a speaker at the high school dance. The crowd was amazing. They were educated, and they really paid attention. I cried as the national anthem rang out. So much so, in the days after the race, I was recognized in the streets of Sydney as the very emotional girl. It was my dream. All the failures, all the hours of grueling workouts, the pain of pushing myself past what I knew to be possible. It was all forgotten in the moment that I stood in the euphoria of a world record and an Olympic gold medal. I was at the pinnacle of my sport. The thing about mountaintops, though, is once you get to them, there's really only one place you can go from there. It was all about to end. What were you doing when you were 27 years old? Within 4 months of me standing on that award stand, my sponsorships, my income, it ran out. I retired from the sport and no longer ranked in the world. I lost my insurance and the support of the USOC and United States Swimming. Natalie Coughlin replaced me as the top American in the 100 backstroke with a new world record. She went under a minute. Everything I had, all my passcodes, and please don't check, were a 59.99, 1/100th of a second under a minute. And Natalie went like a 58.5. So I was replaced very quickly, and it seemed like it happened overnight. Now, I capitalized on my 15 seconds of fame with a flurry of activity. And in case you don't recognize me from that, I'll tell you a little bit about my very short-lived TV career. Today Show appearance, VH1's The List, my own little segment called BJ's Corner on a single season of Splash TV. Brief enough that I'm here talking to you and not on a movie set or at a TV studio. So that'll tell you a little something about my career in front of the camera. If I didn't want to end up a footnote in the sports version of Behind the Music, I had to figure out something else. So perhaps it would have been more dramatic and interesting if I'd had a publicly TMZ filmed meltdown a la Britney Spears, but I didn't end up turning to a life of drugs and groupies. As you can imagine, the groupies for an Olympic swimmer were in short supply and generally were more focused on my male counterparts. You could be skeptical, probably hard to relate to someone who just won the Olympics. Perhaps you're thinking, I'm not going to the Olympics anytime soon unless it's for couch surfing or drinking beverage of your choice. But we may be more similar than you think. We all have to reinvent ourselves and transform. The lessons I learned preparing for my Olympic moment applied in unexpected ways to my career post-sports, and they're the fundamentals. I'm not going to tell you something you don't already know. These are lessons you can apply to what you do every day. But there are some keys to being successful at it. My hope is you'll take something from today and apply the simple plan that I lived by to your own life, in your own role, and in your own business. So let's get to it. What inspires you? Look inside yourself and figure out what it is that makes you tick. Like Kennedy saying, we're going to go to the moon. A big, hairy, audacious goal is a BHAG, is what we call it in the agile or startup world, right? Work toward replacing all gas-burning vehicles with electric ones. Or how about being an organization that keeps your data safe from the bad guys, like Logarithm? Shameless plug. But ultimately, it's about your values. And you don't have to wait for a life-changing event to contemplate them. As you could do it this afternoon over a beverage that Nth Generation has so generously supplied. Or, better yet, how about do it right now? Everybody grab a pen if you've got something to write with, or if you don't, just think about it. Maybe if you don't have your Nth Generation syllabus, you can write something on your hand. Take a moment to think about the top 3 values that you hold. Maybe write those in the margins or on the piece of paper or just on your hand. I'll give you just a moment. Good. As you write these, do your behaviors reflect those values? If you didn't get to 3, you may want to call your best friend this evening and get some help. Sometimes they can help you see more clearly. You could call my best friend. She's a psychologist. She's very insightful. You can come by the Logarithm booth later and I'll give you her number if you need it. Now, as you can imagine, values are vital to being inspired, to living a life that matters, and doing work that aligns. But I want to take a moment and talk to you about attitude, because it's really, really important. It's easy to get intimidated by a big goal or the person that you think you have to be to get there. The way you approach your goals and your attitude about them is really vital. And human beings are really, really good at identifying patterns. So think about the last time you decided you were going to go buy a new car. Maybe your car died, or maybe you just thought, okay, it's time to get a new one. I have a friend who just bought a Tesla, and now I'm obsessed. I see them everywhere now. 2 months ago, I never saw a Tesla. I didn't actually even know what they looked like. And then I sat in one and was like, I love this. So human beings, we just pull these things out of the air. As we start to notice them, they start to show up in our lives. That's how we solve problems. And we're great at identifying these patterns. If you look for reasons to grow, reasons to get better, you will find them. If you look for good things around you, you'll find them. But it goes both ways. If you look for the negative, you'll find that too. Like reasons why your job or your manager isn't very good for you anymore. You'll find it. So be alert for those old patterns that no longer serve you or your values. Sometimes the methods you used for a while don't seem to work anymore. We used to code in Pascal, BASIC. Anybody remember that? Well, now we have programming languages like Python and Ruby on Rails specifically built for solving specific problems. Elegant solutions. And if you never learned those new languages, never adapted, you could be left behind. And those awakenings can be harsh. But you don't choose the circumstances that show up every day. I couldn't have controlled Natalie Coughlin breaking the world record within a few months of me retiring. But those awakenings can be harsh, and you don't choose the circumstances, but you can choose how you react to them. You're going to fail. But before I lose you, consider I'm just trying to give you a different definition for failure. I failed to make the Olympic team for 27 years, until I made it. Because when you fail, and you will, because it's part of that whole living thing, look at why. Look for something you can change to have a better result next time, because truly, until you just quit, until you just walk away, there's always another next time. So you either win or you learn. It's that simple. Look for the failure. Chase the failure, because that's where the best lessons are. That's where we learn where the edges of what's possible is. The Rules of Being Human, which is one of my favorite parables, tells us we're enrolled in a full-time school called life. There are no lessons, or no failures, only lessons. And the lessons will be repeated as many times as it takes to learn them. Look for where you can learn. Don't get stopped by failure. Failure is necessary if you're ever going to succeed. What if failure made you happy? That's a bizarre concept. Did you know that when your brain is happy, positive psychology tells us you are 31% more productive, 37% better at sales. Doctors are more accurate and give better patient assessments 19% more of the time when your brain is at happy than at negative or even neutral. If you look for the good things and the happiness around you, you will find those, and your brain works better when you're there. So fail fast, fail forward, and fail often, and try to be happy while you learn. So let's review. First, get in touch with and know your values. Check your attitude. Next, it's time to build your team. Who are the people, the right people to have on your team? Parents, family, coworkers, you can probably think of several. Remember those values that can help you find those big dreams to chase? When you're after a really big goal, you need to surround yourself with people who believe in your dreams as much, preferably more, than you do, because you won't believe in them every day. The best teammates are the ones who share your values, understand the team goals, and will think of different ways to help along the journey. Lean on your team. Use their skills and resources. Have them fill in where you aren't so strong, because that's what good teammates do. Sometimes teammates will push you, especially your coaches, your managers, to the limits of what you think you can do and then beyond. I trained at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. Unlike beautiful Southern California, it snows in Colorado. I lived at 7,500 feet, and I had a Camry, not a Tesla. From time to time, it would snow, and I would delightedly call my coach and tell him I couldn't possibly get to practice. Then he'd tell me in his gruff South African accent that he'd be right over in 15 minutes, and he'd pick me up and he'd take me to practice. When you pick the right people to be on your team, they lift you up. They listen to you as the best version of yourself, and they won't accept less. When you fail, they'll help you figure out what went wrong and how to avoid it next time. They'll give you a different perspective and look at events with fresh eyes. You need diverse voices on your team. The team needs to include validators and people who'll dish it to you straight up. We're actually better when we challenge ourselves with different points of view. And this has been consistently studied by companies like Google looking at highly successful teams. We are our own worst critics, myself included. As much as I try to be positive, sometimes I do get caught in that tailspin, that rabbit hole of self-doubt. And I depend on my friends and my coworkers to pull me out of that, interrupt that series of thoughts. Now, I often say to other people, get out of your head. It's not friendly in there. Come out here where people love you. I'm really, really good at giving advice, in case you're wondering. At the US Open in 2000, I had a really horrible prelim swim. I swam fast enough to qualify for the final, but it hurt, it was ugly, and it was slow. and it was the Olympic year. And you need to kind of get faster as you head toward the Olympic trials. Well, I was getting slower. This was the wrong trajectory, and I was really freaking out. Those tailspin thoughts were just starting to go. Now, I stalked up the bleachers toward my coach, Jonty. In this picture, he's got a backpack on, and he probably has a video camera in that backpack right there. Because he would always film our races, and then he would look at how do you iteratively get better, right? He would go analyze it. So I stalked up all the way up the stands in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I get to the top of the stands, and I go, am I ever going to swim fast again? Remember the drama, the TV career didn't happen? He looked at me through his bushy eyebrows, and he said, barring a miracle, not tonight. I was so stunned by his answer, his sheer refusal to play along with my drama, that I turned on my heel and I walked back down the stairs to the locker room and went back to the hotel. The truth he was hitting me with was to get control of what was going on in my head. He interrupted the tailspin. That one smart-ass comment shook me back into reality and gave me enough perspective to look at the race, put it in perspective, and choose something else. That's the value of a true team member. They tell you the truth, even when you're not prepared or even happy to hear it. Which brings me to my last point. When you've aligned your values and built your team, there's only one thing left to do. The most important part of any moment is really practice. Practice may mean different things to different people, and it's probably even got different meanings to me at different times. But James Clear's got a definition that I really like. He says, deliberate practice is when you work on a skill that requires 1 to 3 sessions to master. If it takes longer than that, you're working on something too complex. Once you master this behavior, you can then move on to the next small task, and that will take 1 to 3 sessions to master. Repeat this process for 10,000 hours. There are a couple reasons I like this definition. One, it is process focused. If I look at a huge task, stare up at the mountaintop, I'm paralyzed and I don't know where to start. But if I look at it as a bunch of different little tasks that I only have to do a few times to master, all of a sudden I can start to see a starting point. And I can build a team around me, knowing what skills they already have, allocate pieces to individuals, and increase our chances of delivering the entire project. Second thing, although it doesn't directly call it out, this definition acknowledges that failure is going to be part of this process. It's an expectation. Create the baseline. Get better. Try it again. Get better. Learn. Do it better. Build confidence. Don't expect brilliance on the first go-round. You will be disappointed. After that kick in the rear that I got from my coach back in 2000, I pulled myself out of the drama and I remembered my training. I had spent literally years in a pool. I'd reached that Malcolm Gladwell magic 10,000 hours about 10 years earlier. These 2 laps of the pool were not going to be anything more than a drop in the bucket of all the laps that I had done previously. I was prepared. I just had to remember and stop worrying about what someone else might do around me. I got second place that night in the US Open, a time that would be fast enough to put me on the Olympic team 5 months later, because of deliberate practice and because of my coach. So practice is not what you do to be perfect. Practice is what you do so that you can have a bad day and still be the best in the world. Now, if what you deliver isn't really being measured about against the rest of the world, deliver a product that you've worked hard on, you can be proud of, and that brings your teammates up around you. Practice should always drive toward execution, but the execution will take care of itself if you live from your values, surround yourself with a great team, and focus on the process so failure doesn't stop you. As part of this team, we all got to grab the dream that day. We all executed not perfect races, but still the best in the world for one moment. And now you know the secrets for how to do it for yourselves. While I'm not representing my country here today, I am here working for Logarithm and representing them. I do have my Olympic gold medal with me, and if you'd like to see it, come over and talk to me about Logarithm, and I'd be happy to have you hold on to it, bite it, whatever. Thank you very much.